Hey guys, I'm Jackie, and today's video is going to be all about how I got help with my postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, and also how I'm continuing to live with it today. So I had a lot of the symptoms of postpartum depression and anxiety, and actually created a video that I've already shared on my channel if you want to check it out, just talking about some of the details of my experience. So postpartum depression affects about 1 in 7 women. And from what we know, it can happen to anyone. Can't really be prevented, but it can be treated. I want to say that postpartum depression, any depression or anxiety or concern of any mental health, please talk to your doctor as soon as possible. It has to be taken seriously. Because if left untreated and severe enough, it can be life-threatening. And honestly, if I didn't get the help that I did when I did, I'm not sure if I would be here today. So today's video is about my personal experience getting help and navigating my way through trying to live with PPD and PPA. Everyone's healing process is going to be a little different. This is just my experience. So based on what I've read, again, we don't really know what exactly causes postpartum depression, but it could have something to do with the drops in some hormone levels, which creates a chemical imbalance in the brain. So if you do have depression or postpartum depression, it's not your fault. Like, it's literally chemicals and hormones that you can't really control, but you can heal. I also read that there's typically a higher chance that you'll experience depression if you have a family history of depression, bipolar disorder, and psychosis, which I actually have all the above. So I think I cried most of every day since the moment I gave birth. It wasn't until about 2 months postpartum that things started to go downhill at a really rapid rate. The moment that I realized how bad it really was, I immediately made an appointment with my OB and started looking for a postpartum therapist. I remember clearly the morning of my appointment with my doctor, I was extremely anxious and just a tornado of emotions and thoughts and on the verge of a panic attack. As soon as the nurse asked me how I was doing, I broke down. So long story short, they asked me a bunch of questions and ended up prescribing me some citalopram. And I also want to note that my mother experienced hypothyroidism after the birth of one of her children. So I did ask them to run tests on my thyroids, since it could be that. Tests ended up coming back clear, so it was nice to be able to rule that out at least. So I left the doctor's office with a prescription to citalopram, but I wasn't convinced at that moment that that's what I needed. And at this point, I was already doing yoga and meditation, but I thought that there was still something more that I could be doing before I went to medication. So everyone's been raving about CBD oil, talking about how it's changed their life. So I tried it with high hopes. But I ended up being pretty disappointed that it barely took like any edge off at all. And I could see it working for a little bit less extreme anxiety, but where I was at, the CBD oil did not help much. It didn't help enough. So I just had my appointment with my doctor, but I really wanted to still go to therapy and try that out to see if I could do that before taking medication. The website I think I used was Psychology Today, that I used to research bios on a bunch of different postpartum specialists. And I ended up finding one that I really, really liked, and she was right down the road, like 5-10 minutes. So luckily, I immediately felt comfortable with my therapist. I felt seen, and she made me feel like a normal human being. She helped me understand that my life had drastically changed in a really short period of time, and that it's just gonna take a little bit of patience, love, and restructuring to find balance again. She also provided a few new, fresh perspectives that I had never thought about before, and she really empathized with me and gave me credit for all that I was already doing. So after talking to my therapist for the first time, I felt really encouraged that I could get better. But I also left more empowered and sure that I needed medication to pull me out of this deep, dark hole that I was in. So that night I started taking my medication, and my doctor did warn me that the symptoms could get worse within the first couple weeks, and that it would take about 4 to 6 weeks for the medication to like really do what it's supposed to do. I'm so glad that she told me that, because the first week was holy shit. It was extremely challenging. I was in the thickest fog that I've ever experienced. My concentration somehow got worse. I could not function in daily life. And the weird thing is, I felt even more numb than I was before. Like, I went from crying every day, all day, to not being able to cry. I've never experienced that. Like, I had no emotions, no sadness, but also no happiness and joy. It was the most blah feeling. But after the first week, the fog did start to lift. And after a few weeks, I started to feel a lot closer to my normal self. I had more energy, I was able to focus so much better, and I started to love life again. I'm not sure if my postpartum depression or anxiety will ever like fully go away, but I do know that it is so much easier to manage now. And I know that some days are going to be a lot harder than others. But now I have several things that I do in addition to taking my medication. So I'm going to share a few of those things with you. Maybe they'll help you, maybe they won't, but I'm going to share them. So one of the things I've been trying to do is to find simple yet sustainable things that make me happy, like little things. I could maybe read a lighthearted book or a self-help book. I also love to paint and draw and like create things. So that was a really fun way for me to just express myself, even if it was for like 5 minutes. And one other thing that I really liked doing was going to the coffee shop and getting like a fun coffee and just sitting there, and all I did was just enjoy every sip. Another thing that I did with myself was talk therapy. I've been talking to myself out loud like once, maybe twice, sometimes more a day. And I usually do this either like on my way to work or on my way home from work. And all it is really just like saying some of my thoughts out loud. For me personally, hearing some of my thoughts come out makes them just make more sense, and I can just understand myself a little bit better. But it does get kind of sad and boring when you only talk to yourself. So I think it's really important that you find your tribe. I feel really lucky that the friends that I already had that didn't have children were super empathetic and caring and supportive, and I could talk to them about a lot of things openly, and I really appreciate that. But I did also want to talk to other people that had similar experiences with me. So I joined a couple of Facebook groups with other moms experiencing PPD and PPA, and it's been really nice being able to see that, one, I'm not alone in this, and two, just having the support, being able to post what you're feeling and people being able to uplift you. And I've also really connected with some people that had children that I didn't know super well, but I've become super close with. And the relationship that I have with them is just very authentic and real. And we can talk to each other about our questions with motherhood and just what we're experiencing without any judgment. And it's just a really safe place to share. So learn to prioritize sleep. This one was a pretty big challenge for me because we have so many needs that have to be met. Like you have to eat, shower, laundry, pay bills. You have to do all these things in addition to sleep. So it's really, really hard to prioritize that. But it did get a lot easier once my baby started sleeping a little bit more through the night. One of the biggest lifesavers was that I had several people come over and bring me food. And some people even came over and watched my baby while I could take a nap. It's always been really hard for me to ask for help, but it's so important that you do ask for help and that you take the help that is provided to you, because we are not supposed to do this alone. It takes a village to raise a baby. So take the help. Journaling is another thing that's been super therapeutic for me. There's just something really liberating about getting the thoughts from my head down onto paper, and it's like I'm able to wash them out. And I love being able to look back at my old entries and see what I was going through, and to also see how far I've come. Grounding practices, things to get you out of your head and back into your body. So some things that I did for this were really simple, just like going outside, feeling the sun on my skin, feeling the wind on my face, and just like observing the sky and the trees and just noticing what's around me. Also just being really close to the ground, like just laying on your belly or your back. Or another thing I really like to do was sit on the ground or lay on my back, even outside, like throwing a blanket down, or inside is fine too, just something close to the ground. And I do body scans throughout my body, noticing where I'm holding tension or where things might be a little tight, and I can just breathe into it and just reconnect. Also breathing, like mindful breaths, deep breaths in and out. And there's so many different amazing breathing techniques depending on what you're going for. But Ujjayi breath is one of my favorites, where you breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your nose. And just making it a little bit audible. It's like a tiny constriction in the back of your throat. It's like yoga breaths. And learning to let go of being able to do everything. This is one of the hardest things for me because I love doing things. I love being productive. I've had pretty much 2 jobs ever since I've been 16. And I love trying new things and staying ridiculously busy. But after giving birth, my baby took up about 99% of my time. So I'm still working on reprioritizing my life and letting go of the expectation that I set for myself to do it all. And if I find myself like really struggling, I ask, how can I make life easier? What can I let go of? So one of the things that my therapist and I talked about was the house being clean, for example. Like I really love the house to be super clean, just makes me feel less stressed. But that was something that I had to take off my plate or take way down onto the priority list. I figured out that I can live with a little mess in order to keep my sanity. Oh, and writing a letter to your future self or your past self. I have done this just a handful of times, and I want to actually do it more often, but I'm always surprised at how kind I am to my future self. And I really hope that one day I can eventually be as kind to my present self that I am to my future self. And exercise at your own pace. There is no rush to do anything, even though I really wanted to just instantly be back at where I was before giving birth. Before giving birth, I was still doing headstands and like power yoga. But after I gave birth, I could barely walk to my mailbox and back without being completely drained. So I started small. I walked up and down my stairs slowly and just like really took my time with getting back into it. And I'm now almost 7 months postpartum. And in some ways, I'm actually stronger than I was before. But in some ways, I feel weaker still. But I am happy to be back into yoga and just having this space to reconnect with myself physically, mentally, and emotionally. And the last thing that I would say is that has been so crucial to my healing is that I've been practicing befriending anxiety. And to befriend anxiety, I had to personify anxiety. And I could go into a ton of detail about how I do this, but if you care, just let me know and I would love to make a video about it. But for the sake of time, I'll just summarize. But basically, I personify my anxiety in a way that reminds me she's my friend. She's a protector, and she's just here to keep me safe. And there's so much that I can learn from her if I just embrace her. So one of the big things that has helped me is to remember that my thoughts and feelings are totally real and valid, but they're not always true. Like, I don't have to always believe them. Like, they're just parts of our human experience. They don't have to control us, and they absolutely do not define us. But we really do have to talk about these things that we experience, our thoughts and our feelings, in order to find the best, healthiest way to live with them. Because the discomfort, fear, unworthiness, shame, doubt, they're all essential and valuable parts of our human experience. These things just remind us that we have a purpose and values in life. So those are just some of the things that I do to help manage my PPD and PPA. And I'm continuing to try new things and change what I am doing to best suit my current self. If you have any questions or comments or want to know maybe a little bit more details about any of the things that I talk about, please let me know. And if there's anything that you do for your anxiety or depression, I'd love to hear about them, because maybe there's something you do that I haven't thought of yet that may help me. But as always, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you all. Namaste.